If you ask me what destroys a marriage, I won't tell you it's shouting, broken glass, or dramatic arguments like you see in Bollywood serials. No. What destroys a marriage is far quieter, almost polite. It's the silence between two people who once shared everything but somehow ended up living like strangers under the same roof. My name is Aarushi Mehta, 33, born and raised in Jaipur, a city where the mornings smell of masala chai and the evenings glow under the amber lights of old Havelis. I'm a school teacher, an ordinary woman with ordinary dreams until the day my life cracked open so quietly I almost missed the sound. It began on a Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen preparing chai, the steam curling around my face, when I heard a soft vibration Raghav's phone on the dining table, a sound I had heard thousands of times before. But that morning, something inside me stirred. A strange heaviness, like my heart already knew the truth before my mind did. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. There are moments in life where your soul whispers before your eyes see anything. And my soul whispered this. His, no longer yours. When the screen briefly lit up, I saw a single message preview. 6 words. Just 6. Counting hours till Friday. My love, a name I had earned over 8 years of marriage, now casually handed to another woman. In that moment, the kitchen felt colder. The chai boiled over, and the life I had built began to tilt, slowly, painfully, like a building, developing its first invisible crack before the real collapse begins. If you've ever had your heart broken silently, you'll understand why my story must be told. And if you haven't, stay with me. Because what happened next will remind you that truth has a way of finding every hidden corner, no matter how carefully someone tries to cover it. Before we begin, follow this channel if you believe every woman's story deserves to be heard. Now, let me take you to the moment everything truly fell apart. Here is the truth nobody tells you. A marriage never breaks in one day. It cracks slowly, silently, through moments so small, you convince yourself they don't matter. And that's exactly what happened to me. After that Tuesday morning, I kept replaying the past few months in my mind. Little things I had pushed aside, little alarms I had silenced just to keep the peace. It began with Raghav carrying his phone everywhere. To the bathroom, to the balcony, even when he went downstairs to buy milk. A man who once forgot his phone at home 3 times in a single week now guarded it like it contained his entire soul. Then came the late nights, client meeting, extra shift. Boss wants this done tonight. His excuses changed every time, but his tone remained the same, flat, distant, rehearsed, as if the lies came easier than the truth. At dinner, he stopped asking about my day, stopped noticing the things I cooked, stopped looking at me with the eyes that once made me believe I had married a rare kind of man. Gentle, honest, steady. There was a night I'll never forget. I was grading exam papers in our bedroom when he came in, smelling of cologne he never wore at home. Something expensive, something new, something meant for someone else. I asked him casually, "New fragrance?" He stared at me for a heartbeat too long, and then lied with a smile. A colleague gifted it. Why? You don't like it? I wanted to say, it's not the smell I don't like, it's the lie behind it. But I swallowed my words the way Indian wives often do, choosing silence over confrontation, choosing peace over truth. Looking back now, maybe that was my biggest mistake. Because lies don't grow in noise. They grow in silence. And I had given him far too much silence. The nights became heavier, the mornings colder. He stopped touching me, stopped laughing with me, stopped being mine, long before I realized I had already lost him. But here is the part that hurts the most. I kept blaming myself. Maybe I wasn't supportive enough. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I had become boring. Maybe love naturally fades after 8 years of marriage. So I tried harder. I cooked his favorite meals, left sweet notes on the fridge, dressed up on weekends, hoping he would look at me the way he used to. But Raghav's heart had already left our home long before his body did. And I, poor foolish me, kept waiting for a man who had already started living another life. Before I take you deeper into that truth, make sure you're following this channel. Stories like mine aren't just drama. They're warnings, lessons, and sometimes mirrors we don't want to look into. Now let me tell you about the moment I stopped ignoring the signs and started uncovering the truth. There comes a moment in every woman's life when her fear of knowing the truth becomes smaller than her fear of continuing the lie. That morning was mine. After weeks, maybe months of pretending not to notice the obvious, something inside me finally snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a thread breaking inside a favorite sari. I stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of burnt chai still hanging in the air, and whispered to myself, "No more guessing, Aarushi. Today, you look." I walked to Raghav's phone. My hands did not shake. My heartbeat did not race. It was as if my body had been preparing for this moment long before my mind dared to face it. I picked up the phone, typed the old passcode, it opened. And within seconds, my marriage ended silently, brutally, in a series of messages I will never forget. The chat was pinned to the top. Her name, Nisha. I tapped it. The first thing I saw was a photo, her feet resting on a patterned rug I recognized immediately. A rug from a boutique in Udaipur, one Raghav had insisted we couldn't afford last year. The next message was worse. "What will you wear on Friday? That blue sari or the black dress Raghav bought last month?" I felt something inside me collapse. Raghav had come home with a shopping bag and told me it was a gift from his colleague. He kissed my forehead that night. I scrolled, voice notes, heart emojis, plans, laughing selfies from a cafe where he had once taken me on our second anniversary, and then the message that broke me. "Sometimes I forget I'm married. You feel more like home than anything else in my life." Home. A word he hadn't used for me in years. I kept scrolling because pain can be addictive. And once you start looking, it becomes impossible to stop. There were hotel receipts, screenshots of flight bookings to Udaipur, pictures of a bracelet he claimed he had lost. And worst of all, a message where he said, "I wish Aarushi was more like you." I closed my eyes. Not because I couldn't bear the truth, but because I finally could. When I opened them again, the world looked different. Sharper, colder, almost cruel in its clarity. Nisha wasn't a stranger anymore. She was the woman holding pieces of a life that once belonged to me. But then something unexpected happened. I scrolled to one old message thread between Nisha and someone else. A man. Someone named Kabir. I clicked his profile picture. A kind face, tired eyes, a sindoor on his wife's forehead in the photo. My heart stopped. So she was married too. My breath steadied. Not because the pain lessened, but because the truth was no longer mine alone to carry. And that changed everything. Before we move forward, if this story resonates even a little, follow this channel. You never know, someone else might need these truths as much as you do. Now, let me tell you how I reached out to the one person whose life was breaking alongside mine. There is a strange kind of courage that rises inside you when you realize you're not the only one being betrayed. It doesn't erase the pain, but it steadies your hands enough to take the next step. For me, that step was calling Kabir. I stared at his profile picture for a long moment. A man in his late 30s, wearing a simple kurta, smiling gently beside a woman I now knew was Nisha. He looked kind. He looked tired. He looked like someone whose heart would break quietly, the way mine had. My fingers felt heavy as I typed the message. Hello Kabir, I'm Aarushi Mehta. I believe your wife and my husband are involved. If you're open to a conversation, I can share proof. I read it 10 times before pressing send. 2 hours passed with no reply. Then my phone rang. Aarushi. His voice was deep, calm, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. Yes. Is this some kind of misunderstanding? I wish it was, I whispered. But I have screenshots, dates, photos, and I think you deserve to know. There was a long silence. A silence so heavy I could feel it in my chest. Finally, he spoke. Can we meet? We chose a small cafe near Amer Fort, neutral ground for two strangers bound by the same wound. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly. A tall man, shoulders slightly slouched, like head been carrying invisible weight for far too long. Our eyes met, and in that brief moment, there was no awkwardness, just the quiet understanding of two lives collapsing at the same time. He sat down. I slid my phone across the table. He scrolled, and with every swipe, I saw pieces of him crumble, jaw tightening, breath hitching, fingers trembling for a fraction of a second before he forced them still. When he reached the photo of Nisha wearing the sari he once gifted her, standing in front of a mirror inside a hotel room, he closed his eyes. I knew something was wrong, he murmured. She stopped coming home on time, stopped talking to me, stopped smiling at small things. But I never thought this. Pain is strange. It can make strangers feel like old friends. For the next hour, we talked not as two people discovering betrayal, but as two souls trying to survive it. And then Kabir said something that changed everything. I still have the key to our Udaipur homestay. Nisha doesn't know I kept it. A plan formed instantly between us, quiet, firm, almost clinical in its clarity. We would go there first, sit inside, face them when they arrived. No screaming, no drama, just truth. Because truth, when delivered at the right moment, can shatter even the most carefully built lies. Before we continue, if you're still with me, follow this channel. Not for sympathy, but because stories like these show how strength is born from breaking. Now let me take you to Udaipur, the place where our confrontation began long before they walked through that door. People think the hardest part of betrayal is discovering the truth. It's not. The hardest part is the silence that follows, the hours where your mind becomes louder than any voice around you. That silence filled the car as Kabir and I drove toward Udaipur. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, the Aravalli hills rising in the distance like witnesses to our pain. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the road, and the car hummed steadily beneath us, two strangers moving toward a confrontation neither of us had imagined in our worst nightmares. Kabir drove with both hands, gripping the wheel, knuckles pale. I watched the way his jaw tensed each time his phone buzzed. He didn't look at it once. Is she calling? I finally asked. He shook his head. No, it's work. She rarely calls me now, unless she needs something. There was no bitterness in his voice, just quiet exhaustion. A kind of tiredness you feel not in your bones, but in your soul. I turned toward the window, watching fields of yellow mustard blur past. Do you think we're doing the right thing? I asked softly. Kabir didn't answer immediately. He thought for a long moment before saying, "We're not going there to fight, Aarushi. We're going to let them see exactly what they've done. Sometimes truth is the only justice people like us get." I nodded. He was right, and yet my stomach twisted tighter the closer we got. When we finally reached the homestay, the sun was sinking behind the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. It should have been beautiful, romantic, even the kind of place where couples come to heal, reconnect, dream. But for us, it was the place where a marriage would die in front of the people who killed it. Kabir unlocked the door. The hinges creaked, dust dancing in the rays of evening light. Inside, everything felt too still, like a house holding its breath. I placed my bag on the table and walked slowly through the living room, the same room where Raghav and I had once stayed years ago. The memories hit me like cold wind. Laughter, shared chai, whispered plans for the future, all lies now. Kabir stood near the window, staring out at the lake. "She used to love this place," he said quietly. "We came here after our first anniversary." I swallowed hard. Raghav and I came here too. For a moment, we simply stood in the same silence, two people, realizing their marriages had been built on foundations that were already cracking. Then we began preparing. Kabir adjusted the chairs facing the door. I wiped the table and placed a fresh kettle of chai, one they wouldn't be able to drink, beside the stack of printed evidence. The room looked almost staged, like a set waiting for the actors who didn't know they were about to deliver their final scene. Before leaving to step outside for air, Kabir looked at me and said, "No matter how this ends, Aarushi, you're stronger than what they've done to you." His words didn't erase my pain, but they steadied something inside me. Because the truth wasn't coming tomorrow, the truth was coming tonight, and we were ready. There are moments in life when time doesn't slow down. It simply stops, holds its breath, waits. That's what happened the moment Kabir and I heard the sound of tires on gravel outside the homestay. It was 6:42 p.m. The sky outside had turned a deep shade of violet, the kind of color that appears right before night swallows the last trace of day. Inside the room, the air thickened so heavy I felt my heartbeat echo in my wrists. Kabir looked at me. I nodded. No words were needed. The betrayal had already spoken enough for all of us. Footsteps approached, two sets, light, carefree, completely unaware of the storm waiting behind the door. A soft laugh, her voice, "Nisha," then the key turned. The door opened. She walked in first, a small gift bag in her hand, her face bright with anticipation. Raghav followed, carrying their overnight bags, his expression relaxed, almost joyful. And then their world hit a wall. Nisha froze mid-step, her smile shattered. The gift bag fell to the floor with a muffled thud. Raghav bumped into her, annoyed at first, but then he looked up and saw me. His entire body stiffened, his face drained of color. The suitcase slipped from his hand and toppled sideways. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Only the sound of broken trust filled the room. I leaned back in my chair, voice steady, almost gentle. "Welcome. You're right on time." Kabir stood beside me, arms folded, face calm in a way that was almost frightening. Nisha's lips trembled. "K. Kabir, what are you doing here?" He didn't blink. Waiting. For the truth. Raghav tried to regain his composure. "Aarushi, This, this is NT what you think. I tilted my head. Then explain the reservation under both your names, the receipts, the messages, the lies you repeated every night while looking into my eyes. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Nisha stepped back, tears already gathering. Kabir, please, it's not what it looks like. Kabir didn't move. Then tell me what it is. Tell me why my wife is here with another man, planning weekends, wearing saris I bought for her, in rooms I never knew existed. Silence again. But this time, the silence was the confession. Raghav finally whispered, Aarushi, just listen. No, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. You never listened to me. Now you will listen to the consequences. I slid the stack of printed evidence onto the table, receipts, photos, screenshots, hotels, flights, lies. Nisha covered her mouth, tears spilling. Raghav shut his eyes, as if wishing the world would disappear around him. But betrayal cannot be undone by closing your eyes. Before I take you deeper into what happened next, make sure you're following this channel. Some truths you are about to hear might feel uncomfortably close to your own. Now let me tell you the moment everything truly exploded. The thing about truth is this. When it finally arrives, it doesn't knock gently. It breaks the door, walks in, and demands to be seen. That was exactly what happened the moment Kabir stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. His calmness was sharper than anger. Nisha, he said, look at me. She hesitated, her mascara smudged, her breath shaking, her hands trembling like a guilty child. Tell me how long. Her lips parted, barely. 6 months. Kabir closed his eyes, as though someone had punched the air out of him. Not violently, but with the softness that only heartbreak can deliver. Raghav swallowed hard, voice cracking. Aarushi, I lifted my hand. Don't. Every word you say now is just another lie trying to survive. His shoulders collapsed. Kabir continued. What else have you hidden from me, Nisha? You owe me the truth now. Every piece of it. Nisha stared at the floor. There are things I couldn't tell you. What things? Kabir asked, voice cutting through the room. She wiped her tears. You were always stressed. You were already struggling with money after the renovation. I didn't want to burden you. Kabir's expression hardened. What money? My heart pounded. Something deeper was unraveling. Nisha hesitated for a painfully long moment. I took a loan, 10,000 rupees, for my brother's rehab. I didn't tell you, and I paid it back using. Her eyes flicked toward Raghav. Kabir stiffened. You used his money? Raghav looked away. The silence confirmed everything. You let another man pay your debts, Kabir whispered. Why lying to me about delayed bank approvals? Nisha, what have you done? She broke down completely, choking on her sobs. But the truth wasn't finished. Raghav suddenly turned to me, desperation trembling in his voice. Aarushi, I know I made mistakes, but you have to understand, our marriage wasn't perfect. You were distant. You were always busy. I didn't feel loved anymore. I laughed, quiet, bitter. Raghav, I wasn't distant. I was exhausted. From working, from carrying your responsibilities, from covering your debts you hid from your own parents. Do you remember that? Or has Nisha replaced that memory too? Raghav froze. Kabir's eyes widened. Nisha looked stunned. I leaned closer. 12,000 rupees. Gambling debt. 2 years ago, I kept quiet because I thought protecting you was protecting our marriage. The room went cold. Raghav whispered, I didn't think you knew. I know everything, I said. I just didn't speak. That was my mistake. Kabir finally sank into a chair, hands over his face. So, this was our life, he said. A marriage built on lies. Two liars comforting each other while we carried the weight. Nisha crawled toward him, voice shaking. Kabir, please, I never meant. Don't, he said softly, stepping back. Don't touch me. Not tonight. Raghav tried to speak again, but I cut him off. You brought another woman into the place where we once tried to build a family, I said. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. The truth filled every corner of the room. Thick, suffocating, impossible to escape. But the night wasn't done with us yet. Because just when I thought nothing else could shock me, Nisha whispered words that made every heartbeat in the room stop. Aarushi, Kabir, there's something else. And the world tilted once more. Some truths don't arrive gently. They land like lightning, splitting the world into a before and an after. And the moment Nisha whispered, there's something else, the room shifted. The air thickened. Even the shadows felt like they were listening. Kabir's voice was barely controlled. What else, Nisha? What could possibly be worse than this? Nisha pressed a trembling hand to her stomach. Her lips quivered, her eyes red and swollen. I found out last week, she said. I didn't know how to tell anyone. Not you, not him, not myself. My heartbeat slowed. Kabir's breath caught. Raghav's eyes widened. Nisha inhaled sharply, impregnant. The word didn't just fall, it detonated. Kabir staggered backward, as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. Raghav's face went blank, shock replacing every trace of arrogance he had left. And I felt a strange stillness wash over me. Not pain, not anger, just clarity. Kabir's voice broke first. Is it mine? Nisha nodded, tears streaming. Yes, I'm sure. Raghav and I, we always use protection. Kabir, it's your child. Kabir collapsed into a chair, cupping his face in both hands. The sound of his shaking breath filled the room. It wasn't relief, it wasn't joy. It was the agony of a man forced to feel love and betrayal at the exact same time. Raghav looked at me helplessly. Aarushi, you have to believe me, I didn't know. I never wanted. I stopped him with a look. It doesn't matter what you wanted, I said quietly. Choices have consequences. And you made every choice that brought us here. For the first time since the door opened, Raghav had nothing left to say. Nisha reached toward Kabir, but he held up a trembling hand. No, he whispered. I need a moment. I need air. I need something that isn't this. He stood, walked toward the window, and stared out at the darkening lake. His silhouette looked like a man aging 10 years in a single breath. I felt a pull inside me, not toward Raghav, but toward the version of myself I used to be before all this. I wanted her back. I wanted my life back. And suddenly, I knew exactly what had to happen next. I reached into my bag and laid a folder on the table, the second one I had prepared. Aarushi, what is that? Raghav whispered. My future, I said, and yours. These are divorce papers. Signed, documented, finished. Raghav stepped forward. Aarushi, please don't make decisions like this in pain. I'm not in pain, I said softly. I'm in truth, and truth clears the path better than love ever could. Kabir finally turned around, his eyes glassy but steady. "I'll take responsibility for the child," he said. "But Nisha, you and I were not what we were. Not anymore." Nisha sobbed, folding into herself like a collapsing tent. The four of us stood in the wreckage of the lives we thought we had. But I, for the first time, felt something close to freedom. Because some endings aren't tragedies, they're doorways, and mine had just opened. There are nights that carve themselves into your memory so quietly, so precisely, that even years later, you can still hear the sound of your own footsteps, walking away from who you used to be. That night became one of them. The room had fallen into a silence so deep, it felt like the walls were mourning with us. Kabir sat slumped in the armchair, his hands tangled in his hair, his breath uneven, as if every inhale reminded him of the life that had shattered. Nisha knelt on the carpet, arms wrapped around her stomach, rocking slightly, as if trying to protect the only thing left she hadn't destroyed. Raghav stood across the room from me, lost, hollow, shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that the person he thought would stay beside him forever was already gone. I picked up the divorce file again, my fingers tracing the edges of the papers. "Raghav," I said softly, "there is nothing left between us to fix." He took one step forward, voice raw. "Aarushi, I know you won't forgive me now. But maybe someday, when the hurt fades, when—" "It won't," I whispered. "Because this isn't just betrayal. It's the end of everything we built, and the beginning of everything I was too afraid to choose." He looked at me as though hearing his sentence. His lips trembled. "Aarushi, I loved you." I shook my head gently. "No, you loved the comfort of me. You loved the version of yourself you got to be beside me. But love? Love doesn't ask for secrecy. Love doesn't hide in hotel rooms. Love doesn't need another woman to feel alive." His chin dropped. Tears rolled down his face, slow, heavy, almost reluctant. Kabir finally lifted his head, voice hoarse. "Aarushi, do you need a ride? I can drop you back." I smiled faintly, touched by his steadiness despite his brokenness. "No, Kabir. This is something I need to walk out of on my own." Kabir nodded, eyes full of grief but also respect. I took my bag, my shawl, my car keys. Nisha's voice cracked behind me. "Aarushi, I'm sorry." I paused. Not to forgive her, but to finally let go of the weight I had carried too long. "I hope you learn from this," I said quietly. "Not for Kabir, not for me, for the child who deserves a better version of you than the one who walked into this room tonight." She broke down completely. I turned to Raghav one last time. He looked small, not physically, but spiritually. A man finally seeing himself without excuses. "Aarushi," he whispered, "is this really the end?" I stepped closer so he would hear the truth without misunderstanding. "It ended the moment you chose someone else," I said. "I'm just choosing myself now." And with that, I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the chilly Rajasthan night. The wind hit my face sharp, clean, honest, and for the first time in years, I could actually breathe. Some endings echo like grief. Mine echoed like freedom. In the weeks that followed, I learned something simple yet powerful. Freedom doesn't arrive loudly. It comes softly, like the first breeze after a long storm, like sunlight slipping through curtains you once kept closed. I moved into a small flat near the old city, where mornings smelled of cardamom tea and evenings echoed with temple bells. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to save a marriage, to fix a man, or to shrink myself so someone else could feel whole. I was simply living. Kabir and I remained connected, not as broken spouses of unfaithful partners, but as two people who survived the same fire and walked out carrying their own light. And Raghav, he became a memory, not a wound. If someone were to ask me now whether I regret walking away, my answer would be gentle, certain. No. Some stories end, so your life can finally begin, and mine has.